The oral history microphone is again on the air, and today we have as our visiting dignitary Durwood Hamilton of Gilbertsville, Kentucky. Durwood is a retired postmaster, among other things, and I know he's widely known throughout the county and Graves County and other nearby areas. Among other things, he was at the war crimes trial at Nuremberg, but all that will come later. This is Ray Mofield introducing you, and we'll ask you first of all where you were born.
I was born at Gilbertsville, Kentucky.
So you're still living there.
Right.
Well, that's great.
I'm one of the few people that got to be postmaster at their hometown now. You know,
Yeah.
all this moving around.
Oh yeah, they bring them in from Wisconsin now. I don't much like that, really.
No, I don't. It takes the personal side. I'll tell you something amusing about Gilbertsville, or me being postmaster. See, when they built the dam, we had to move to Mayfield due to the fact my father was a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the...
So you lost your farm by the flooding, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to work at the Mayfield post office. I was a career employee, and later on Mr. Oddie Culp retired, and I came to Gilbertsville and got to Gilbertsville office, and there was a man. You know, there are people jealous of anybody that has a good job. There's a man who's real jealous of me. So he came in one day and said, "I think this is awful." Said, "You moved in here from out of town and got this job." Said, "Some local person should have had this." And I laughed and told her, said, "Sir, you see, you look out the window, and I could point to the place that I was born. You know, and I could see the place that I was born from the post office window. So I was not a foreigner, as he thought."
Well, didn't they used to have a rule that if you took an RFD or I guess a city carrier also, you had to live in the area served by that? Or?
Right. When I entered the Postal Service as a carrier clerk, I entered in Mayfield right after the war, and I had to be a resident of Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
And now the only resident clause is the postmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Postmaster has to be a resident of the area he serves. Of course, they get around that some.
But now, when he's appointed, can't he be appointed from San Francisco and then move here right quick?
Right, yes. It doesn't. That's changed. And when I became postmaster of Gilbertsville, the rule was that you had to be a resident of the area for a year before you'd be eligible to be postmaster.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that way you knew the area much better.
Right.
And you're thinking about localized service and helping the public and so on. I don't think that was a bad rule personally, but of course I'm not running the post office.
I think it was an excellent rule, because if you don't have the personal contact, if you don't care for people, I don't think you need to be serving the public. If you don't really, and I don't know if that is the reason for moving postmasters around and get. You can get attached to people. They say, "Well, I don't mean we can't break the rules for a friend, but we can do favors for them." I think.
Sure.
I think that's part of it.
Well, I agree with that 100%. Now, tell us your father and mother.
My father was Tommy Hamilton. He was born.
Well, you kin to these singers? There are lots of singers named Hamilton.
I'm kin to most of them.
Charlie?
It's very odd. I'm kin to them not on the Hamilton side, but on their mother. I come through on their mother's side. Like Charlie, I'm kin to Charlie on his mother. His mother was a Hawkins.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember Edgar, that was a barber here in town?
Oh, yes, I remember.
Well, I was kin to Edgar through the Cox side. My great-grandfather married a Cox, and Edgar's mother was a Cox. So Edgar and Charlie and I were kin through their mother's side, not through the Hamilton side.
And your mother was?
My mother was Tula Butler, and she and Zola Bryan were own sisters.
That makes you kin to Toad Bryan.
Yeah, Toad is my own cousin, and where I love him. I have two brothers, and I've told some people I love Toad, but my two brothers and I don't have any problem, but I love Toad about as much as I do my two brothers.
Well, you ought to get him to tell you how to run for office. You've done pretty well at that.
He sure has.
Well, do you remember the grandparents on either side?
I remember my grandfather Butler. He was Todd was also Toad's grandfather. I remember my grandmother Butler. She lived with us for many years. After my grandfather died, my grandfather Butler died when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I remember he was blind, and he would. Now I take after him. I'm a little and short. I like my grandfather Arthur Butler, and he would measure me, put his hand on top of my head to see if I was growing.
Yeah.
I'd go there, and every time he'd go over, he would measure me. That was the way he would try to determine if I were growing.
Well, very good. Now, you were born at Gilbertsville, and I assume you went to school there.
No, I went. My father was a tenant farmer for a while, and we moved to across the bottom, and I went to Pew School my first time. It's a one-room school.
I've heard of that.
I believe, now I may be wrong, I believe it was the last one-room school that in existence in Marshall County. I may be wrong, but it was among the last.
Among the last ones.
Right.
Well,
It was a large one-room school. I had some good teachers there, and I look back and think I know you're in the educational system. I know I'm amazed at what a good job those teachers could do with. Sometimes we had as many as 80 students in that one room. And the thing about
all 8 grades and teaching 4 or 5 subjects to each grade. You wonder, in a way, how they manage that. They do a better job in many ways than we do now.
I had Mr. Do you remember Lionel Salmon?
Yes,
he passed away just recently.
Yes.
He was one of my teachers at Pew, and I loved him. And W. Chumler, I'm sure you know him.
He was my teacher at Hardin one time.
I've kidded W. and Robert Goheen. They were both my teachers in school, and I got prematurely bald, and I've kidded them lots of times, but
you gave it to them.
about them being. Them teaching me as a boy.
Oh, they were fine fellows.
Right. I guess Robert Goheen was, if I had to name, I've had lots of good teachers in high school, in grammar school, high school and college, but I guess if I had to name my favorite, as a teacher and as a gentleman, I guess I would name Robert Goheen. Robert Goheen really made an impression on my life. He taught me at Birmingham. I moved to Birmingham later.
You went to Birmingham some. Now you're getting over, I don't know what there is about it, but the people I've interviewed from Birmingham, they always thought that was the greatest spot that was ever on this earth.
Right. It was.
Mark Clayton tells me that,
right.
you know.
Yeah. Mark Clayton. And then I know you're a basketball fan, and I consider myself privileged to have. I went to high school with the best basketball player that ever played in Marshall County, Joe Fulks.
Joe Fulks. Well, I'll agree with you.
And he went 3 years of. he played 3 years. I told one of the Sun Democrat sports editors a few years ago, you know, they were always writing about Joe being from Catoy.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Joe was 3 years from Birmingham and 1 year from Catoy. I said, we don't want them to take all the credit for Joe.
From Marshall County viewpoint, it's unfortunate. Now you look in the state tournament record books, and it says Joe Folks Catawa.
Right.
But of course, as you say, he only went there his senior year after the Birmingham school was closed down because of the dam construction. Yeah, I was a freshman at Murray State with Joe and Red Metcalf and Herbert Hurley and a lot of other players who were right good Marshall County basketball players, of course. But I think Joe was certainly he had to be better than almost anybody that ever lived. He's on the NBA Helms Foundation all-time All-American team. So.
Right.
Now, that's the only Marshall County that ever did that. In fact, there aren't many people from anywhere in the world that have done that.
Right.
Those were great times.
Right.
I can remember playing against Joe in high school when they'd come to Hardin. Everybody dreaded it. He was good then, but of course he came into his own at Murray State.
I can remember I seeing Joe play an exhibition game at Mayfield High School, Murray, and some people thought this was a miracle. I said, well, that's just Joe. Joe can do that. He was running down the court, and they threw the ball, and he reached back, behind his back and caught the ball with one hand.
Yeah.
He could do anything. I believe he could have played with the Harlem Globetrotters if he'd have won it. I mean, he could handle the ball well enough to do it anyway.
He had large hands.
Right.
He was the first fellow that I had ever seen that could just take a basketball and hold it like a baseball.
Right.
And of course, that contributed, no doubt, to his good playing. Well, tell us a little bit more about where you lived, the games you played, the things you did as you were in grade school, and.
Well, in grade school, I went to Pew until through the 6th grade, and which we were about the only sport we could play then was softball, because we didn't have the money to buy the equipment to play baseball. And we played, and then of course we played basketball on the outdoor court. And I always enjoyed sports. I was small, but I played softball at Pew, and then when we went to Birmingham,
did you finish the grade school at Birmingham?
I finished the grade school at Birmingham, and I went one and a half years of high school at Birmingham before I moved to Mayfield. After I finished at Mayfield. And I played on the basketball team at Birmingham. I was 5'6", and I wondered, when I came out as a freshman, and I wondered about my size, if I could make. But I made the first 10 on the basketball team at Birmingham, and I played for a year and a half there. And then when I moved to Mayfield, of course, you were keeping up with basketball. You see, Graves County then. They didn't play the brand of basketball Marshall County played. They were more on the football. And
they have a great football tradition, but I guess until they brought the guy from Cuba, Jack
Story
in there, that they ever really got serious about basketball in Mayfield.
I know Mr. Pickard, Pickard was the coach at Mayfield when he tried every way to get me to play basketball at Mayfield, but we had moved 6 miles west of Mayfield. It's in a Catholic community, And I had my choice of going to Fancy Farm High School, Dublin High School, or Mayfield. But I wanted to go to Mayfield. And
But practice was difficult for you, wasn't it? You were 6 miles out.
And it was impossible for me to practice, and so I gave up my basketball career. Ended with Birmingham. Well, I did play in gym. I know one year there was amazed. I believe we played all year in the gym, and maybe we lost one ball game. And I happened to have one tall boy on the Charles Blaylock, and I got on the same team, and we managed to win most of our games in the gym classes anyway.
Well, you know, one thing about playing in those old gyms, it was a tremendous advantage to be at home, wasn't it? Because the ceilings were low a lot of times, and you learned just where to stand and how to throw it and so forth. And a visitor coming in was somewhat taken aback. Now on a big full-size court with a crowd, they still yell, but they're not right on you. I can remember when they'd trip you as you went down the floor.
Yeah, I got
fans were out across the lines. If they little old gyms wouldn't seat over 300, I don't suppose, but they'd crowd 500 in them.
Right. And I got tripped at Birmingham playing, and then I got 2 skinned knees. I said, well, I got 2 points out of it, though, because they gave me I got 2 free throws. I guess maybe it was worth getting 2 skinned knees for that one.
I can remember at New Concord playing there, and they had big pot-bellied stove on the side.
They had the frame high school, didn't they?
Yeah, they had a frame. There was a little space on each side where the stove was and where the desks were. That was study hall. That gymnasium was. And when they practiced in the afternoon, there wasn't much study going on. And during a ball game, they'd fire up those stoves real hot, you know. You didn't get too close to them. Right? Oh, those were wonderful days in many ways. Of course, it's much better now in other ways, too.
Right.
Well, now, I presume that sometime or other in your life you married?
Oh, yes, I married after I got out of the Army. I met a sweet little girl from Lowe's, Kentucky. You know where Lowe's is?
Oh, I certainly do. Now, that's getting close to Alvin Barkley.
Right, yeah. I married a Essie Gardner. Lots of people kid me bad. Said, did you marry her for money? They thought she was kin to Ed Gardner.
Yeah, the millionaire in Mayfield. Yeah.
I said, no, I married her because I fell in love with her. But she went to school at Lowe's, and she still works at the post office at Gilbertsville. And they kid people now about nepotism. I did not hire my wife at Gilbertsville. The co-ops hired my wife, and then she went to work at the Gilbertsville office before I did. She's 4 years younger than I am. She's still working. I had to retire early on disability.
Mm-hmm.
I've had heart problems. And
well, how did you meet this young lady? You didn't. She wasn't born in Gilbertsville.
No. A lot of people kid me about it. One of my best friends had been dating her, and so I didn't feel that I tucked her away from him, but he was trying to talk to another girl, so I moved in on this on his girl. So we wound up being. I believe later on they call it going steady, and then later we got married.
When his attention wavered, well, you were ready.
Right. I was in college when my wife and I married, and we moved to Murray. Lived in.
Did you live in those veterans houses?
Orchard Heights.
Heights. Oh.
had some distinguished neighbors there. I'm Dr. Blaylock from Paducah, the stomach
Oh, yeah.
specialist, lived in the same apartment complex with me, and Dr. Bill Colburn lived across across the across the alley from me.
Yes.
We were and
And of course, he was in Calvert for years and years then as
Right.
mayor and physician.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I guess he's still there, but I think he's
Right.
quit as mayor.
Yeah, and he's
Gradually
quitting his
easing out
practice
on his practice.
as his son.
Take life
Yeah.
a little easier.
Right.
Well, that's wonderful. Certainly. Did you have any children?
We have 3 children. I have our son was born while I was in college. I guess he was influential maybe in me leaving college. I don't regret it. I took the post office exam 1 month after I got out of the Army. That's before I married or before I started college. And of course, after the war, the postal people employment was slow because the returning veterans were going back to their jobs in the post office.
And they were allowed to reclaim those.
And I was the first person hired from examination at the Mayfield office, but at that time I was a senior in college. So they called me, and I had to make a decision. Do I want to get my degree, or do I want to go to work at the post office? And we had our son, and naturally I thought we needed the money, so I left college and went to work at the post office when our son was about 6 months old. And he's a personnel manager at the Hickman steel plant, and we have 2 daughters. One's married to a career serviceman, lives in Columbus, Mississippi at the present time, and then we have another daughter who lives in
Tom
Calvert.
Bigby headquarters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went across the Tom Bigby River not too long ago. We were down visiting them.
And the other one?
The other one lives in Calvert City. She works at the...
So you get to see her more.
Right.
Grandchildren there?
Yeah, have 5 grandsons and 2 granddaughters.
Oh, that really makes it perfect set.
Right. And my youngest daughter works at Kentucky Down Village as a hostess.
Very good. Now, I don't want to miss a little bit about your service. You went into service, and what branch were you?
I went in infantry. I was in the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red 1. Some people nicknamed it.
And you were around Nuremberg during the war crimes trial.
Yeah, we were I was fortunate. I lived through the war. I was on a line company, and life is short in line. Over 70% of the men killed in World War II were killed in the infantry. And I got the Bronze Star and the Silver Star.
Congratulations.
And I was not an officer, by the way. I was a PFC when I got those. I'm not degrading the officers. I don't mean that, but what I'm saying is, it's a little enlisted man has to work a little harder for those decorations sometimes.
Now, how did the war crimes trial impress you? Did you make some notes? The defendants? Yeah. Did you get to see Goering maybe?
I saw all. I was in the court. I've been in the courtroom with Goering, Hess, von Ribbentrop, Stracker. I saw all. See, we were the guards. Our division, we were the guards for the trial. And
so you saw Germany's foreign minister of aviation.
Right. See, Goering was aviation. He was in. Goring was, of course, into trials. He always said he was the first one in the front row.
Kind of a fat man
right,
in a way.
Right, and Hess sat by him, and Hess had been in prison so long. It's amazing if you were, it was in 1945, first time I saw Rudolph Hess, but it's amazing that the man is still living.
Yeah.
He looked,
He looked at the point of death then.
Right, he had a
Thin.
real bad color, and he was thin.
Mm-hmm.
And but of all the war criminals that you just look at them, and you see people sometimes they say, "Well, I don't like his looks." Well, the striker was the one that he had a mean look. But,
Yeah.
and he sat on the front row too. I didn't like him. They tried 20. They were going to try 22 men at the war trials, and one of the men committed suicide before he got to Nuremberg, and they tried 21.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you probably know, you probably read the story. They sentenced Goring to hang, but Goring had a cyanide poison, so I believe he got it out of a ring,
Mm-hmm.
and he poisoned him. He cheated the how they say cheated
The hangman.
the hangman.
Yeah. Well, still, it amounted to about the same thing, didn't
Right.
it? I guess.
Yes.
In his eyes, I suppose it was a more honorable way out, but
Some people thought, there are people now that are marching against our atomic bomb. What's the correct word for it? Against our nuclear.
yeah,
But
they're against nuclear energy, really, a lot of them in any form.
I thought about it. Lots of those young people are in Washington demonstrating. Chances are, if it hadn't have been for the nuclear bombs, their fathers probably would have got killed in Japan.
Yeah.
The same way some people thought the Nuremberg war trials were unjust, but they tried those people for crimes against humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think they were justified. I mean, we might say, well, if Germany had won, do you think it would have been justified to have tried Truman and some of the other people? But see, we didn't start the war. I'm like
And we didn't build any big ovens and roast
Right.
millions of people.
Right. we didn't. We weren't. I don't.
Of course, I suppose the victor can do about what he wants to, although world public opinion might have some limitation on it in our own generation.
Right.
Well, we've only got about 3 more minutes now. That's still a good little bit. I want you to get in whatever you'd like to talk about here.
Well, of course, I've been. You want to talk about the post office?
Whatever you think.
Oh.
The post office would be great. What are some of the changes when you first started to describe Gilbertsville when you were growing up?
Gilbertsville was a small town. It had 3 churches. It had the Baptist, Methodist, and Church of Christ. And we had a high school, a small post office, and a depot, and the railroad came through, and we had Mr. Wilmore's grocery. I can remember talking about people talking about having hard times. I can remember hard times. My dad would take sweet potatoes to Mr. Wilmore
Mm-hmm.
and trade in the fall and trade sweet potatoes to Mr. Wilmore for my older brother Delbert and me a pair of shoes to wear to school.
Yeah.
We got one pair of shoes a year, and he would trade sweet potatoes to Mr. Wilmore. You probably knew James Moore. That's James's father,
Mm-hmm.
and for that's the way we get our. then there was the post office. There was a small fourth-class office, and in 1930, in the 30s, when President Roosevelt put postmasters under civil service. Mr. Oddie Cup, he's still living. I went to his son's funeral this week.
Oh, that was John.
John Lowell, yes. And Mr. Oddie was the first permanent postmaster at Gilbertsville, and I was the second. That's what I'm talking about, permanent. He was the first one that was under civil service.
And you wouldn't be fired every time the president changed in parties and so on, yeah. Well, I can remember at Hardin, Leona Starks would come in and out. He was a Republican, and when Woodrow Wilson was in, then when Harding came in, he went back as postmaster, and then Roosevelt came in. He was fired the first minute, of course. And between there were Democrats who got the same treatment.
I think the post office is changed a lot. So I don't think it's. I know I had